Welcome to Talkin' Shit, the podcast where we get real about the unfiltered truths women face in the quest for perfection. I'm Jana, your host, a dietitian and fellow woman navigating the pressure to have it all together, the perfect body, career, relationships, and making it all look effortless. Who set that standard anyway? Here, we're calling out the diet fads, hustle culture, beauty standards, and everything else that keeps us feeling stuck. But we're not just venting, we're diving into how to break free and rewrite the rules on your terms. So, grab a coffee or a glass of wine and let's talk some shit. Together, we'll uncover how to live a life that's unapologetically yours. This is Talkin' Shit. Let's dive in. Hey friend, quick question before we dive into today's episode. Does dinner stress you out more than it should? Because if you're like most women I talk to, figuring out what to make every single night feels like another full-time job. So if you're tired of the daily what's for dinner stress, I've got something just for you. I've created the What's for Dinner guide with 50 quick, healthy, and blood sugar friendly recipes that are perfect whether you're cooking for yourself or your whole family. No more second guessing, no more last minute takeout, just real food made simple. Grab your copy for just $9, click the link in the show notes, and make dinner the easiest part of your day. All right. Now I'm back to the episode. But seriously, don't wait. Your weeknight sanity will thank you. All right, welcome back to the Talkin' Shit podcast. I have Julie with me today. Julie and I connected at a women's networking event where she shared more of her story, and she's actually going to share with us today too, which I'm very excited about. But something that really stood out for myself was how she shared about the unintended life. And we're going to dive into that more of how that actually shows up in all of our lives, most likely, and how we can really be present with it and continue to heal and show up as our best self. So Julie, thank you so much for being part of this conversation. And I'm so excited for others to be able to learn and hear your story. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, well, let's dive in. So share some of your story with us.
So, okay, the easiest way to get to know me is to hear the 5-minute story or the 5-second story. I am an example of living an unintended life. My story, actually, we have to go back 20 years to start my story. And in version number 1 of my life, I was a teacher and I was married and I had 2 babies and I had a very predictable life that I had crafted and created. And one Friday, I went to work. I got sick from one of my little front row Joes, and things just through a series of worst case scenarios, I ended up with encephalitis, meningitis, a unintended retirement, and brain damage. And I still had 2 small babies at home. I had a husband, and I abruptly shifted from a fully functional working woman to a housewife with a broken brain, who into this day struggles with keeping things straight and remembering things. Mm-hmm. So I spent several years learning how to do that life. And it was a life that I didn't want. It was a life that it was hard to remember, and it was hard to fit into that life. And I became more accommodated to that and accustomed to that. And then in 2017, my husband abruptly died on me. He had a pulmonary embolism. And my first thought was, how am I going to do this? Because he was my memory keeper and he was the one who helped me keep everything together. And so again, stepping into the shoes of an unintended life, except this time, those shoes required work boots for an orchard because he was a farmer. Mm-hmm. And so I learned how to run the farm, and I learned how to drive a tractor, and I learned how to do all of the things that were required to keep my orchard alive. Because when an orchard falls apart and the trees don't grow, you don't have a crop and you don't have money, and then you don't pay the bills. So it became very clear, right? Very clear. So I went through that iteration of my life. And then as I went through that iteration and was healing from the loss of my husband and dealing with the challenges of solo parenting, right? We're doing all of these things that we never intended to do. And actually things that I remember saying, I will never do that. I'll never do that. Like that's almost a guarantee that it'll happen.
Yeah.
But so I just started to work with, I was a very organized person. I started organizing, and then the widows found me, and that quickly transformed into a practice in which I supported widowed people, and I supported them. What's become of this evolution is that I now support women as they rebuild lives that they didn't ask for, but they're ready to own. Right.
Ugh. Goosebumps.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so that's really just been a winding path from, the girl with the broken brain to today, where I'm doing new things. I'm working with new women, and I'm working in new areas. But by now I've had enough practice in the reinvention that when something new comes along, I can say, yeah, I've got this. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll figure it out.
Yeah. Man, that ownership piece is hard though. What is that? Can you share with us, Julie, just like, I mean, ideally, like the end goal is to own our story, right? And to step into it and claim it and have the accountability and really be able to maneuver it. But before that, there's a lot of shit before that we have to really go through. What was like some of the emotions that you had to really process in order to get to that ownership aspect?
You know, that's such a good point, because there's a lot of shit that goes along with it. And there's a lot of anger and in spite and sadness and grief. There's a lot that goes into owning the story. But what happens is there comes a point, I always tell my ladies, you can get better, not bitter, but you have to want to, right? There comes a point when you have to decide, am I, like you just said, am I going to take ownership of this story? Am I going to figure this out one day at a time? Or am I going to let the story control me? And then, and I don't like the way that the story could have gone. And so you have to step in to the ownership of that story. And that means you're going to be sitting with frustration. You're going to be sitting with anger that whatever it is that you're doing is not following the plan that you had. Right? You're going to grieve. I began working with widowed people, and what I have discovered is grief is everywhere, and grief is in the unintended life, because it's something called ambiguous grief. And we have to grieve what could have been, what once was, but is no longer, right? It's kind of this very nebulous shades of gray grief. It's non-physical, but it's very much there. And we have to grieve that. We have to grieve that I'm not a high-powered businesswoman, but I'm a soccer mom. There's grief. There is grief there.
Yeah.
I'm in a marriage and maybe I don't recognize my husband. There's grief there. That's not the man or the partner that I married. These are the kids that I thought we were going to have this amazing life, and they're a pain in the ass. Like, there's grief. There's grief there.
So it's interesting because I see this a lot with the grief of our bodies, right? Grieving the body that we thought we would have, and it's often very weight-based. Right? I thought that I would look this way, or I thought because I did this, I would get that. And there's so many women that share this grief as it relates to the body that they inhabit today that does not look like what they thought they would look like. And there's a lot of, getting into the core of, okay, how can we just be with that first and foremost and be aware that that's happening so that it doesn't continue to sabotage our future as well?
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Grieving the body that our 20-year-old self had. I'm 54 this year. My body is very different. And I really had to have a funeral for the body I thought I was going to have, because it's never going to be. But what I had to do is I've had to embrace the body, right? We have to embrace what is instead of what we want it to be. And we have to honor the body has a story to tell.
Mm.
My body has a story to tell. My body survived a brain injury that kills a lot of people. My
Yes.
body grew two humans. You
Mm.
know, my body learned how to do hard physical labor.
Mm.
So I do not have the body, and I'm not a perky young woman. I never was, right? There's the illusion of that. But I have to honor, like we have to honor, this isn't what I thought was going to, right? This is not the life I asked for. This is not the body I thought I was going to get, but I'm ready to own it.
Mhm.
And I'm ready to respect it.
Yeah. So I remember in my own journey, and I still have to be mindful of this, of not going into victim mentality. And the word victim is a very charged word, actually. And it lives, I would say, in almost all of us, where we become victims to our situations versus taking that ownership. How does that victim mentality kind of seep into our day to day and relate to that unintended life that we all probably are living?
Right. The victim mentality, it's insidious, right? It's so easy and it can become the default if you're operating unconsciously. And victim mentality will sound like, oh, I don't know, or I'm just so tired. I don't know why this happened, right? I don't know how I got here, this dissatisfaction. So we have the opportunity, with widowhood and with grief and with people who are grieving, all of the things. Victim mentality can look like this happened to me and I have no control.
Mm.
And so, because this thing, right, this thing outside of my control happened to me, and because this happened to me, I'm now spun out forever. I am no longer able to work forever. That is the victim mentality. But when
Mhm.
the reality is, yes, this thing happened to you, right? This is a circumstance that was beyond your control. But getting over the victim mentality begins with owning your story. It
Mhm.
begins with, right? I always talk about you're being dealt a new deck of cards. You're being handed a new deck of cards. So if you have been dealt a new deck, now what? Okay. You can be a victim and you can cry and you can be sad. And you can say, I don't like this deck. But in the end, that's not going to help you. That's
Mhm.
not that, there's a future version of you waiting at the end of your unintended life. And you
Mhm.
have no idea who she is.
So true.
Right? Right?
So
We don't
true.
know who she is. But some people will say, "Oh, that's horrible." But some
Mhm.
people will say, "I can only imagine and let's go find her. Let's go find future Jana. Let's go find future Julie. Let's get some skills down. Let's take care of our bodies. Let's take care of our time, right? Let's begin with acknowledging that a shift has happened. Okay.
Mm.
This is not, and the shift could begin with the words, this is not the life I had planned. Okay. It doesn't mean that you failed. It doesn't mean that you failed. It means that life got real
Mm.
and but you have the tools and the resources to meet that challenge.
Can we stay there for just a second? Because I have found in the coaching space, just with working with men and women, that idea of just being really real and saying it for what it is can be very, very hard to do.
Absolutely. We are
Why?
conditioned. We are conditioned. Don't say bad things.
Yes.
It's this cultural indoctrination. My mother's generation,
Hmm.
these spouses could be horribly behaved, right? The mothers, both genders,
Hmm.
they were abusive. They yelled, they screamed, they had poor coping skills, and their message to us was, well, you just take it, right? It's this
Hmm.
cultural indoctrination, and we have to have the courage to say, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say what it is. I'm going to speak the words. And that can
Hmm.
be really hard.
Very hard for for what we've experienced and then also what we do. Like
Yes.
our own behaviors, to be really real with our own behaviors and saying, I do this can
Yes.
be really hard. It's like, oh, I feel like I'm, well, one, going to be judged or shamed or guilted. Like, I mean, there's a lot of ways that we can receive that for our own self, but also from other people. But there is so much power in just being able to say what is real in your own life.
Well, and being able to say what is real and understanding it doesn't mean that you failed, right? We attach failure. And when I say, I say, for example, I should be exercising every day. Like that's what I should be doing. That's the bar. And when I'm saying, and for me to say, well, I do it once or twice a week. That's not just speaking what is, that is then admitting failure and saying
Mhm.
that I failed. But the problem is, like you have said, we can't get to where we need to be until we acknowledge where we are. And it doesn't mean that we failed. It means that life got real. And so,
Okay.
but here's the thing. When we acknowledge, like, I am not where I need to be, I am missing a set of skills. When we acknowledge that, that's almost like cracking us open. And that's
Mhm.
saying, okay, then this isn't working. Let's crack open. Let's shed it off. Let's burn it off, whatever it is. And let's work on something else. Let's
Mhm.
find a way.
Mhm. So
So,
after we acknowledge where we actually are,
yeah.
what's the next step to moving forward?
Okay. I would say that the next step is reclaiming the steering wheel of your runaway life. That's when you have a runaway life, you feel like you're on Mr. Toad's wild ride. So I
Yeah.
would say that step number two. So number one is you need to, what we talked about. But number two is start. Just start. Like you don't need a 5-year plan. You need one small act of reclamation, right?
Oh,
One act of reclamation a day. What am I going to do today this is what I always say. What am I going to do today to make my life better for future Julie?
mm,
Right? Future
mm,
Julie wants to play pickleball. So this Julie had better do her physical therapy knee stuff so that she can go play pickleball. Like,
mhm,
what can we do today? How can we reclaim our lives? And that reclamation could be as in our thoughts.
mhm,
I'm going to let go of the dream. I'm going to quit being mad at my family or my husband or my sister or my kids or whatever it is. I'm going to
mhm,
release that because it's not helping me.
mhm.
It's keeping me stuck, right? It's keeping us stuck in an old narrative.
100%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And also release the anger towards self.
Yes. Yes. Because anger towards others takes a lot out of us, a lot of self anger.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Okay, so I have that. I mean, that's a great visual, Julie, of reclaiming your stealing. I just see that, right? Like, because that's ultimately like getting to ownership is you are the one that's in the driver's seat.
yes.
You
Yes.
are the one that's holding the wheel.
Yes.
That's the only person doing it for your own life. And every single person's life looks so different. So, I mean, that's so powerful. So I
And
visually can see that.
And I think that one of the parts of owning the wheel, right? So if we take over the wheel, then we have to go, where the hell are we going?
Yeah.
Right? But maybe we're getting ready to go off a cliff. We need to turn. What part of going off the wheel or getting to the wheel and grabbing the wheel is taking some time to figure out what do you want?
Mm.
Okay. So your life, you've got an unintended life, but what do you want? Because even though you've been dealt a new deck of cards, you can still, right? You can still play the hell out of that deck. It's just a new deck, but you have to know what you want.
Yeah, and sometimes when you grab the wheel, you're also going to just stop the car
Yes. And breathe and pull
and
over and
and
say, what
pause.
the hell just happened?
Yeah. Where am I? Yes. Instead of
Right.
feeling like we have to speed up or try one more thing or do one more thing, like there's so much power in just being able to momentarily press the pause button and ask that question of what do you actually want? Or for myself, I ask my coaching clients like start creating needs lists. Like what do you need? I want to know, what do you need? And so many women share with me, I have no idea what I need.
Yeah.
And that's part of the curiosity and more of the understanding of what works for you in this moment, not the past self.
You have a really good point there that I think and I see it everywhere. Women struggle. We don't know what we want because for so many years, we've been in charge of knowing what everyone else wants and managing everyone else. And when we finally get the wheel back, we don't even know what we want. So I think part of that is figuring out, like there is a figuring out time where you have to ask yourself, what do I like? What
Mm-hmm.
do I want to do? What does a life that honors me or honors my life or my potential legacy or my family, what does that actually look like? Because we can say things that we've seen on Instagram and we can say things that we've seen like, oh, yeah, that's what it should look like. But what does it look like in your soul? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What is the thing that makes you want to get up in the morning?
Mm-hmm.
That's what helps you get back in the driver's seat, right? You have to find it.
Yeah, so true. It's really a spiritual journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay, so now we have our hands back on the wheel. We're asking ourselves, what do we want? What do we need? What's after that?
Well, okay, I would say actually, you've already said it. We need to rest.
Mm.
We need to rest like a woman who runs the show.
Oh, tell me about. Okay, I want to know about that.
Listen, we don't need to rest like the woman who has ran over soccer and made dinner and done the laundry and signed the homework and collapses. That is not right. That's the old story. That's the old deck of cards. If we pulled that car over and we're realigning ourselves and we're figuring out what we want, we need to rest like a woman who runs the show. We need to say, okay, this is my life. These are the things that I want to intentionally build. I'm
Mm.
going to build them and I'm going to rest because we live in burnout and we have made it an altar, right? We worship at the altar of exhaustion because we believe that busyness and productivity equates worth. And that has got to end.
Mhm.
What needs to start is that an acknowledgement that you can't rebuild your life if you're burned out,
So true.
right? Pausing is not failing, right? What do we do between the inhalation and the exhalation? We pause.
Pause.
What do we do if we get upset? We pause, right? Pausing is not failure. The rest piece is where you actually get your next piece, right?
Yeah.
It's in rest that we can figure things out. We cannot figure things out from a place of burnout. And it's exhausting. If you have been running around and you have been giving of yourself and you have been pouring out of yourself, right? We all have energy. We all have so much energy to give during the day. And if you have given away all of your energy, of course you're exhausted.
Mhm.
And you're already on empty and now you're trying to do new things. You need to anticipate, I'm going to be wiped out, but I'm going to rest like a woman with intention. I'm not resting because there's nothing left to give. I'm resting intentionally. I'm
Mhm.
taking care of my body intentionally,
Mhm.
right? I'm
Yeah.
nurturing me intentionally so that I can drive this car. I can orient myself. We talk about finding your North Star, finding your big why. Okay. Once you get yourself oriented, you rest, you get back in the car, you're in the driver's seat, and you get going.
So I remember I was speaking in front of a group of women, and this literally just like popped into my head. It was not part of my presentation, but I said, you have to remember that you're not a machine, you're a human. And
Oh, love that.
you just like everyone stopped, including myself, because I was like, where did that come from? I have no idea. But that I think goes back into acknowledging who we really are. We're not machines. We were not meant to go 24/7 nonstop and never taking care of ourselves, never fueling ourselves, never asking, oh, like, what do I need, like you said, or what do you want? We're not meant to function in that way. And it makes sense why so many women in particular feel drained and tired and exhausted and are wondering like what the hell is happening here, because we're treating you like a machine, not like a human.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And we're looking at what other people have because we live in this time of social media and we go, well, I should be doing that or I should have that. And we've got to stop that. We've got to say, what do I need? Right? What is it that I need? Not what other people need. What brings me joy?
Mm-hmm.
What makes, right? What fills my tank? What do I need to sustain the race?
Mm-hmm.
Because we know, here's the one thing that I have learned. As soon as you think you've got that deck of cards figured out, you're going to get a new one, like about every 7 to 10 years. So there's Bruce Healer is a researcher and he talks about life quakes. And he said, yes. And so what he says is that about every 7 to 10 years, you are going to have a major life event, right? You're going to get a new deck of cards. And so if you can live knowing that this is going to happen, then when it does, we can actually make it an easier process because we can get rid of the fighting part. We can get rid of the why is this happening and I don't like this and all of this energy that we spend denying the reality. And instead we can go, oh, you start counting. You're like, oh, it's been 8 years. Of course this is happening. Of course this is happening. And it's going to take about 2 years to get through. Like things are going to be tough and then I'm going to get through. And I'm going to have so many, there is a rhythm and a cycle to life.
Mm-hmm.
And so while the unintended part is going to keep dropping on you, right? Those life quakes are going to keep dropping. At least we know I have the skills. I have the things within me to weather this storm.
Yeah.
Right? Like you had said, I've learned how to take care of my body. I've learned how to listen to my soul. I know what I need to do for good mental health.
Mm-hmm.
I take a walk. So every evening, I like to have dinner early. I like to have dinner at 5:30 is my perfect time for dinner.
Okay.
Because I want everything digested, right? I want everything digested by the time I go to bed. So I have dinner. I clean the kitchen for my mental health because that signals to my brain, we are done,
Done.
right? Kitchen is closed. But then I go for a walk. And there's no dogs, there's no kids, no one's allowed on my walk.
Mm-hmm.
No matter what happens in my life, no matter how things fall apart, I know that this little evening ritual puts me back together.
Mm-hmm.
It gives me a way. This is how I have learned to process my day. And if it's been a big day, I might walk for a full hour, versus a half hour. I don't time myself. I don't say I've got to do a 3-minute mile. I just go for a walk and I walk until I'm ready to come back inside.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I've learned to take care of my soul.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know what's waiting for me, right? We know what's waiting for us.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, Julie, I think you highlight something really powerful. As you said, it's going to take probably about 2 years to get through it. And I think that allows space and permission to just be in the unfolding of life versus I feel like this is actually something that is not helpful from a social media perspective is we usually see like the before and afters and it looks like it's, immediate results, but that's never how it happens. It always takes so much more time than we think it's going to take. And I think we haven't allowed ourselves to be at that pace that it's okay. It took one more month. That's okay. Like, just keep going. And I think there's a lot of grace in that, really.
No, there is. There is. We talk about this a lot. We call it the messy middle. I think I've heard 5 or 6 different people like the messy middle. It's the space between where you once were and where you need to be or want to be. But what happens, like you said, we try to rush. If you think of the messy middle like a big river, we just try to jump and we're trying to get across as fast as we can. But the reality is there's magic in the messy middle. There's skill acquisition. There are life lessons that you need to learn so that you can get to the other side and you can get there with grace. Right? Right? We talk about that. It's not about the destination, it's about the journey. And part of that journey is in the messy middle and remember, not all life transitions are bad. We are hardwired to look for bad things. It could be an amazing life transition. You could get a job as the president of a company and you're moving to Germany with your family. Amazing thing. It's still a huge life transition.
Yes.
And it's still, no matter what the major transition is, there's still this messy middle. There's still this period of time where we need to learn the skills, and we don't even know what the skills are. And if we rush the process, we're going to miss so much growth because that's where the growth happens. So that when you get to the other side, you're like, yeah, I'm here and I did that.
Yeah. And also when you're speaking, I'm just thinking of, making it okay to say, I don't know. Right. There's been so much ingrained into us of like, you should know by the time you're like 21. It's like, you don't know shit. And then it changes. Right. But I just keep hearing like to share, like, it's okay to not know. Right. And that doesn't mean that you're doing it wrong, or it doesn't mean that you're failing. It literally means maybe you're just in the messy middle where you are learning what fits best for you at this stage of life.
And what you just said, I think that's the magic. That's how we get through. You just said, we are learning. We're just in the place where we're learning. So when you get frustrated because you're in the messy middle and you're saying, I don't know, just add, but I'm learning. Or I don't know yet. Right? We give ourselves grace. Like you said, we give ourselves permission to say, I don't know. When I started farming, this is what I would tell myself. I only have to be one day ahead of everyone else. I only need to know enough to get through tomorrow. And I did it every single day.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm going to tell you that my last year of farming, my crop, the farmers still do not understand how I had such a good harvest. Because they thought I was crazy. They thought I was doing it wrong. They thought I was, one time, one of them ran into me. I was changing water and I had a bathing suit on and a cover up because I was also being a mom. And it was like, this is how I'm doing it. I don't know what I'm doing, right? I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm figuring it out. And you just keep doing it. You just keep doing it day by day by day. And eventually you realize I'm not in the messy middle anymore. Somehow I made it to shore.
Yeah.
Somehow I made it through. And when you look back on the woman that you were and the skills that that woman had, and you look back on her with compassion and love, right? Because I think we like to beat, and I fall into this trap. I like to beat up older versions of Julie. What I have to do is I have to tell them, I'm so proud of you. You were doing the best you could with the skills that you had. And I'm so proud of the woman that I've become because I learned new skills and I'm using the new skills, but to hold them both with love.
Hold them both.
Jenna, we're going to have by the time, so I'm older than you. And by the time our lives are done, there are going to be so many iterations of us. It's like some people that could be terrifying. I think it's amazing. Like there's a version of me that isn't even there yet. And I wonder, like, will she have pink spiky hair and wear feather boas? Like, I have no idea. I have no idea what she's going to be, that eccentric old lady. Like, I don't know. But I do know that if you look back on your life, you change. And in about every 10 years, you are not the woman you were 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Means you are not going to be the same woman in 10 years.
Yeah, this is actually one of my favorite things to think about, I think, is the higher self aspect. And I have journaled on the next version of myself so many times because I get really excited about her. Like I can picture her and I write all the things that she does. And then I'm able to look back and be like, oh my gosh, like I am her now. But it's very exciting. And some people will share like they feel like they're overwhelmed by it because they think about all the things that they have to change. And I always like to flip that of like, what can we be excited about? Because you literally can step into that person, you get to create her. And oh my goodness, she's like magnificent. Like, can we just get excited about that? And it really can generate energy because we are meant to be new. We are new every second of every day. And that's just our human nature, really.
And I love that you said we can get excited for her. We don't even know who she is yet, but we
Hmm.
know she's there.
Right.
And Janet, we can do things today to make life better for her.
Right.
And like I almost hold her as a separate but equal person,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
Like she's not, I mean, she is me, but I hold her as if she's an actual separate person. What can I do to help her? What can I do to make her life better? What is she going to need in 5 more years?
Hmm.
Right? Maybe she needs me to build muscle.
Hmm.
Maybe she needs me to make sure I'm eating my green vegetables every day. Right?
Right. Right.
Maybe she needs me to learn how to meditate. Like,
Mhm.
or, like I look back here, maybe she needs me to start a blog or a podcast, or maybe she needs me to speak, to use my voice for good. Like,
Mhm.
what can we do to support her?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this would go in so many areas. It's just personally, so I'm using this podcast to open up a little bit more of my own personal journey. And because I think people resonate with stories like you started and shared. And I am starting the process of meditation, which has always been something I've pushed back against because I do not like to sit still. But I am being called to be in a more quiet, still space. And this whole podcast or this whole meditation series is about letting go. And my higher self needs me to let go. She needs me to let go of old narratives, of old stories, of, past versions that no longer serve myself today, but also that next version. And I think, again, that could be so powerful to, yes, it is the same person, but we think of her in a different way. We talk about it in that way of, well, what does she want? Right. Like, and so that we don't personalize it so much that can drop those barriers to change. And so I encourage those that are tuning in, create your next version of yourself. Talk about her, write about her, think about her because she does come to life.
And Janet, dare to dream and dare to be bold, right?
Mhm.
If you like, for me, I want to travel. The next version of me, I want to travel and, right, there's that unintended life. I have a farm, I have kids, I have no husband. I mean, I'm a widow. Travel does not happen right now, but instead of being angry about it, right, or upset about it, I keep saying, well, there in the future version of me, she gets to travel.
Mhm.
She gets to have a bolder life. She gets to create her own rules and to lean into not just what I think I should be, like, oh, I'll be retired and I'll play pickleball. Well, what else? Like, okay, well, that's a good start. Like,
Do that
that's a
too.
great start. But what if you wanted to do, what else could you do? Because we are really only limited by our imagination.
So true.
Did you 5 years ago think you were going to have a podcast?
No, I live the unintended life through and through. Like in high school, I thought that I would have my degrees, be married, and have two kids by 25. And I'll be turning 38 and I do have my degrees, but I have no other thing that was like pictured then. And so I think that's no, I know that that's why it really resonated with me because I've had so much resistance to honoring and owning who I am today because it was not what I thought it would be.
Right. And,
Mhm.
like we talked about, in some ways, you may be living a life that you didn't ask for or imagine, but you can still own that life.
Yeah.
And there's beautiful things in that life. And there's power in that life. But you have to give yourself permission, right?
Yeah.
You have to give
Mhm.
yourself permission to say, this isn't what I thought, but I'm giving myself permission to live. I'm giving myself permission to have joy every day. I have a
Yes.
quote, actually, I'm taking off my glasses. I have a quote on my board that says, We were made for joy, delight, and whimsy.
Mm.
We were made for joy, but we have to choose it.
Yes.
Right? We have to choose to delight.
Yeah.
You know,
I think that goes.
Joy gives us the oxygen. Joy gives us like the fuel to do all of the hard things.
Yeah.
There's a book, Katie Bowers or Bowlers, and she had said, she talked about that it's people who, like, some people will say, you're a really playful, lighthearted person. Hell yeah, I am, because that is the only way that I can do really heavy work. I sit with people whose lives have been destroyed. And you have to balance that. So I play and I have joy every moment I can get.
Mm. I think that goes into, just as we're kind of closing out, I think, and I could talk probably for hours on this, but giving yourself permission to put down the heaviness so that you can pick up the joy that is all around if we're open to seeing it.
I love that. That you just blew my mind. That is so profound. We have to give ourselves permission to put down the heaviness, because we can't, right? If, like, just like picking up a dumbbell, we can pick up one. So you can pick up joy, or you can pick up sorrow. Joy and sorrow can coexist. Like,
100%.
Let's not get that wrong. Let's not mess that up. Joy and sorrow can coexist. However, which one are you going to carry? Which one's going to follow you, and which one are you going to hold close? Because you pick.
We do. Gosh, this was a wonderful conversation, Julie.
Oh, well, I am so glad that we got to have it. I think what you're doing is wonderful.
Yeah, this is the shit that I want to keep talking about, because this is the stuff, like, I mean, so I probably like 5 different times through this conversation, I got goosebumps, and this is the soul of us women. And there's probably some men that are listening, but my audience is majority of them are women. And I think this is our next story that we get to share, right? Of more women saying, I get to put this down because it's been really heavy to carry. And I'm starting to pick up some new stuff that is feeling a lot lighter and a lot more joy filled. And I am owning my story.
And that you are giving them permission, right? We're just reminding them that you have permission to set that down. You don't have to carry that. You don't have to carry that rock. You can put the rock down.
Yeah.
I love that, because what amazing things, once you put that heaviness down, what amazing possibilities await if you believe. If you believe, I have amazing things ahead of me. Right now, it might be really hard. Right now, I might be in a tough season, but I'm going to believe that there's amazing things waiting for me.
Yeah.
So
belief and faith changes everything.
Yes.
Well, anything else that you would like to share with individuals that are listening here today? Anything else that comes to mind?
You know what? I think I just want to remind your listeners that grief exists everywhere, that grief is not reserved for a physical loss, and that it's okay to grieve. It's okay to grieve the future that you don't get to have, or the dreams that you don't get to have. And that giving yourself, just like giving yourself permission to dream, give yourself permission to grieve and to say, this is not turning out the way I wanted. Because it's only when we throw ourselves on the floor and pitch a fit and wear ourselves out a little bit that we can go, okay, now what the hell are we going to do?
Yes. Fine, I guess I'll keep going. Yeah. Oh, I'm a huge fan. Kick, scream, yell, throw a tantrum.
Yes.
And then we got to move forward.
We pick ourselves back up. We to figure out, how the hell am I going to play this new deck of cards? And I'm going to do it well. So
I'm going to do it well. Perfect way to end. Thank you so much, Julie.
Thank you for having me.
This has been Talkin' Shit. If you like this episode, please give it a thumbs up or leave a review on the Apple Podcast app. If you want more episodes, click that subscribe button. And if you want to learn more, visit healthwins.org. Talkin' Shit is produced and hosted by me, Jana. This production is also made possible by the Community Media Access Collaborative. Learn more at cmac.tv. See you next time.